We have 6 of the strongest characters in the Warhammer 40,000 universe that are currently on the tabletop. And today we're going to figure out which one is the strongest. I'm going to make my case for all of them. A bunch of you are going to agree, and a bunch of you are going to disagree. Let's get into it. I'm going to talk about specifically how these Primarchs operate on the battlefield. And I'm going to be ranking them due to some actual factors and not just who do I like the most. I'm going to be talking about the damage they actually are capable of dishing out. I will speak about their mobility, which for those of you who have played 40k and probably gotten pretty good at the 40k at this point, you realize that mobility is a huge part of the game. Jank, otherwise known as utility. So what do their Primarch auras or their abilities allow them to do that affect the game in very interesting ways? What is their durability? So can they just tank an entire army? Some of them can. What is the points cost? How expensive are they for what they do? Then I'm going to also offer up some perspective on what I might try to do to improve and or balance the Primarchs. And then lastly, before we get started, I want you guys to understand I'm trying to consider these units in a vacuum, not in their best attachments. So if you take Magnus in, Warp Meld, for example, it's very, very different than Magnus in Grand Coven. So it can change things a lot. So I'm trying to talk about just the Primarchs and how they fit into their individual armies. So this should be relatively agnostic of detachment. But of course, when they're playing in certain detachments, it could change things, although I've also kind of taken that into account in my final rankings. So let's get started with the Snake Boy himself, Mr. Fulgrim. So when we're looking at Mr. Fulgrim's damage, first off, amazing model. Second off, stupid that his base size is that big. Third off, amazing model. All right, anyway, his damage is going to be on the lower end of what the Primarchs do in this matchup. So he's got 6 attacks with his strikes, which are going to be at strength 14, AP3 D6 plus 1. They do have sustained on them, which is relevant. And they also have 12 attacks on a sweep, which is going to be at strength 8, AP2, damage 2, which is also sustained hits. So he is going to be on the lower end of the damage. He's going to be roughly approximately right where the Loyalist Primarchs are, which is pretty interesting, seeing as the Loyalist Primarchs tend to be not as combat machines as what the Demon Primarchs are. Now, he does have actually very decent mobility when you consider that he has very, very high speed with permanent access to advance and fallback and shoot and charge. The problem with his massive speed is that it also restricts his movement fairly significantly because it's not hard to move block him. It can be very, very easy for him to get stuck behind, a wall. So it can cause massive problems for it. And this is the main reason why we see people not really utilizing him. It's not necessarily that his damage is poor, that his abilities aren't good. It's that his base is so darn big that it does cause big problems with his ability to maneuver the battlefield. That being said, he does have the Deep Strike keyword, which can absolutely help with this, especially when you combine it with the glorious stratagem, which is Rapid Ingress. Hopefully Rapid Ingress sticks around for 11th edition, by the way, because I love that. So he does have pretty darn great speed, but his base can be very restrictive. Now, Jank, what is his utility? It's okay. Like, he does have some utility. His splitting attacks thing is a really big deal because he can always... in the shooting phase and in the fight phase, he's going to choose one unit that he actually dealt damage to. And then for the rest of the game, at each start of each command phase, that unit is going to be taking D3 mortal wounds on a 4-up. Which means that he can continue to play the game even after he's dead. And I do believe that this is actually a relatively overlooked ability. I actually like it a lot. I would like to see it procced on a 3-up and not on a 4-up, mind you. But I do believe this ability is significantly better than what people are saying it is. Then in addition to that, when we talk about his auras, while his auras might not be necessarily the best, they are decent. And he does have the best timing on auras of basically any of the Primarchs. So his auras are done at the start of his opponent's command phase, which is really, really interesting. It really allows you to react to what do you think you need on your unit in this turn. And they're going to be fights first, which is a dramatic improvement to his melee stats because it can make it very hard to charge him. His ability can be -1 to be hit, which can dramatically improve his durability if opponents are lining up to shoot him or even charge him. And then he also has a no fallback leadership aura. So if you have to pass a leadership test if you want to fall back, otherwise you count as remaining stationary. And this can really screw up your opponent's plans. Like if you just fail a leadership test that you didn't expect to fail, well, that can really, really, really dramatically mess up your opponent's plans for their turn. So, decent Jank. And then his durability is going to be very standard. He's going to have 16 wounds, toughness 11, 2-up armor save, 4-up invulnerable save. This is going to be the standard for the Demon Primarchs. It's going to be a little bit better than it is for the Loyalist Primarchs, although the Loyalist Primarchs have ways to kind of offset this as well. So, then he is going to come in at 365 points, which does mean he is one of the, I think he is the cheapest Demon Primarch. It might still be a little too high for what he's worth, granted. Now, how would I improve this guy? And I'm going to give you the official rankings at the end of the video. So personally, what I would do to change his abilities is I'd make his no fallback aura a -1 aura, and I would make it a battle shock test, not just a leadership test. This would make it a dramatically improved ability because that -1 really changes quite a lot. And since it's a battle shock aura, that could also make your opponent battle shocked in their turn, which can be truly, truly devastating. This would be a nightmarish ability. And I do not believe that we have any chance of him ever getting a different base. I just don't think that's ever going to happen. So that would be one of the ways that I would potentially even utilize the fact that he's got such a large base, because it's a much bigger aura in that case. Then I would also take his damage to +2, not +1. I would make it like the same as Angron, where Angron is D6 +2 damage. The +1 makes it a little bit too swingy. I want him to get minimum damage 3 on his strikes, meaning that at minimum he's going to be killing an elite infantry most of the time. Then I would also, the way I would change him is, what I would do is I would allow him to choose one of his 3 abilities at the start of the game and have it become permanent. So if you just want to start the game with fights first, boom, you always have fights first. Then every turn, you get to switch in between the -1 be hit or the no fallback aura. I think this would go a long way to making Fulgrim actually very usable even at that points cost, because Fulgrim does have a lot of very reasonable things going for him. His base is just a freaking nightmare. If I'm not mistaken, it's the same base that a Greater Unclean One is on, which makes it really hard to move him at times. So that is probably what I would do in order to make Fulgrim viable. Another option would be, hey, give him the ability to walk through buildings. That would also be one that could also work really well instead of these other things that I recommended. So there's several ways that we could actually make Fulgrim quite good without having dramatic points drops or anything like that. And I think these are very simple and reasonable solutions that I hope GW might look at some of these in their balanced status slate, which we should be getting, any week now. So we'll find out if they looked at this. Now, like I said, I'm going to explain all the Primarchs, and then I'll rank them at the end. Now we have Mortarion. So Mortarion, he actually has the lowest damage output of any of the Primarchs. So he does have 5 attacks at strength 14, AP 3, D6 +1 damage, and it does have lethal and dev. Now, lethal and dev are kind of anti-synergistic, because if it's lethal, then it can't be dev, but that's okay. And then he also has a relatively good sweep attack with 15 attacks at strength 8, AP 2, damage 2, which has both lethal and sustained on it, which is a really good sweep attack. As a matter of fact, it's the best sweep attack of any of the Primarchs that we're going to see. But his strike is the worst. So maybe it's not fair to say that he has the worst melee, but he definitely has the worst strike profile of any of the Primarchs. So yeah, maybe that's the way I should have phrased that. Now, moving on, it also, by the way, just due to his army rule, many times it will turn out that he's also going to have an extra AP on those things, which, takes him to AP 4 and AP 3 respectively, which means that his sweep attack becomes actually very, very good. So, I'm not going to say it's the lowest damage output, but I am going to say it is low damage output compared to some of these other Primarchs. Then we look at his mobility. Now, he does have very low mobility for Primarchs. He only moves 10. As a matter of fact, it's probably the lowest mobility, now that I'm thinking about it. He does move 10, he does have fly, and he does have deep strike, which is really, really good. But he's still a big base. He can't move through walls, all of these things. So it does actually decrease his mobility quite a lot. And that can be a problem for games. Then we look at his jank. He's got reasonable jank. So his mortal wound aura is in the movement phase. So at the end of the movement phase, every enemy unit that is within 6 inches of him, on a 4-up or on a 3-up, but on a 2-up if you're within affliction, which, you're basically always going to be within affliction at that point, then you're going to take a D3 mortal wounds, which can just apply to a whole bunch of things, which is very interesting. So that's cool. Then we're going to look at his some of his Primarch abilities are also very interesting as well. He has all these abilities aren't really auras. What they are is he gets to choose them when they come up. So it's not like everyone else who's chosen in the command phase. So it's actually pretty interesting timing on it. He can choose when an opponent ends a move within 9 inches of an enemy unit who's within 6 inches of Mortarion. He can give them a reactive move up to 5 inches. He can also do a 2-up fight on death. He can also do a shoot back after being shot. All of these are going to have to require the unit being targeted with the ability to be within 6 inches of Mortarion. This is very interesting. And also, just because why not? I guess it's weird, but Mortarion does have the grenade keyword, which is cool. So as far as durability is concerned, he absolutely is the highest durability of the Demon Primarchs, or of all the Primarchs. He has 16 wounds. He is T12, which is a very important breakpoint, with a 2-up armor save, a 4-up invulnerable save, and then that beautiful, beautiful 5-up Feel No Pain, meaning Mortarion is the Demon Primarch who will stand in front of your army and tank your entire army. And you said it is Death Guard, and like that's their whole shtick. That is very reasonable. So for 380 points, I believe this guy's approximately perfect. He's got a great sweep attack, a pretty poor strike attack, but durability is incredible. Mobility is low. That's the way it should be. If you've got crazy good durability, mobility should be lower. He's got reasonably decent jank. And at 380, he is a investment, but he doesn't, it's not like he takes up your entire army. So I think he's probably about perfect on the balance front, and I like it. Let's talk about Mr. Magnus, the Big Bird himself. Now, when it comes to damage, he is a different type of Primarch. Now, all the other Primarchs have some shooting, but it's largely incidental. When it comes to Magnus, his shooting is the big dang deal. So he's got two shooting guns, or 2 guns that he's going to shoot, and he'll shoot both of them each time. And they have a 24-inch range. Obviously, when you're in certain detachments, you can buff things, but I'm trying to stay more or less detachment agnostic during this video. So he's got 3d3, strength 11, AP 2, damage 3, devastating wound shots. Okay, got it. Very reasonable. And then he also is going to have an additional d6 plus 3 blast, strength 6, AP 1, which ignores cover, damage 2 gun. Then we will look at him in melee. He has the worst melee of any Primarch, but his melee is not bad. It's 7 attacks at strength 16, crazy, AP 3, damage 3, and then he's got a sweep attack for 14 attacks, strength 8, AP 1, damage 2. So while he does have the worst melee attacks of anyone, it's not like it's terrible melee, and he 100% has the greatest shooting, and it is killer shooting. So his damage output, as far as all of the Primarchs, is probably the highest damage output total when we really when we all tally it up. So I'm just going to say highest here instead of high. His mobility is extremely high. He has a move 14 base. He's got one of his Primarch abilities can give 2 inches to that, so move 16. And then he's got access to all of the Cabals, which is the army rule, not detachment rule, so I can talk about it, where he can just give himself an extra 6 inches of move, or d6, depending on how he rolls. He also has the deep strike keyword. Not that you would ever really use it, because you're pretty much always going to start the game with him on the board. When it comes to jank, he's got massive jank. Probably the best jank out there. He's got +2 to cast his Cabals, which is the army-specific rule for Thousand Suns, and he can cast 2 Cabals, which is different than every other caster. It's always going to be 1. He's got that 6-inch aura of +2 inches to move, which most people will always start with. So that means turn 1 T-Suns is always going to be really, really fast. He's got -1 to damage, excluding Psychic, which does make him unbelievably durable. It makes him just slightly less durable than Mortarion, but more durable than every other freaking Primarch out there. And then he's got another Primarch aura, which you're never really going to see, but you get to choose one unit that has ranged weapons, and they get hazardous within 24 inches. So you'll never see that one. So it's basically always going to be +2 to move or -1 damage. So that does make his durability the second highest of all Primarchs, with 16 wounds, T11, 2-up, 4-up, and then the -1 damage from the aura. Highest damage output, second highest durability, very good jank, and extreme mobility. For 420, I think he's basically fine, because 420 is pretty expensive. But the reality is, him going up by 15 to 20 also makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't be super surprised if we don't see him hit that 450 point. And he's still real good. So he does need to go up in points a little bit. I don't think his abilities need to be touched at all. But that's the thoughts on Magnus. Then we look at Angron. Now, a lot of people are angry about Angron. And as a matter of fact, when the World Eaters Codex was released, a lot of people just were angry about World Eaters in general. World Eaters are great right now, everybody, just so you know. All that fear was overblown. Now, Angron, we got some things to talk about. So he does have high damage, right? It's weird. The strength of his weapons are pretty odd. So they gave him 8 attacks at strength 14, AP 3, D6 plus 2 damage, but it is dev, and that's pretty important. Now, the fact that Magnus has a higher strength than him is pretty weird. Not that it really matters, because, I mean, 14, you're still winning everything on 3s, but it'd be nice if for 16, so you could win T8 on 2s. Not that there's much T8 in the game. So his strike is still very strong with that D6 +2 and devastating wounds. And then his sweep is also very strong with 16 attacks at strength 7, AP2 damage 2, and devastating wounds. Very good sweep. Now it's weird that's not a strength 8. It's just that's bizarre. I think it's super bizarre. Now his mobility it's okay. He moves 14, which is fast, and he has the deep strike keyword. So okay mobility. His jank is meh, maybe slightly bad. He's got an ability that on face value sounds incredible, but when you dig into it, it's not really that incredible. So once per game, if you roll 3 6s on your Blessings of Corn rule, which you get to roll 8 dice, that is the Word Eater's Army rule, then, well, it's not once per game, but it's he can come back to life if you use those 3 6s to bring him back to life. But when you do it, he has to come back to life in your turn. He can't do it. He can't like rapid ingress in. He has to be returned, doing normal reserves, right? And he comes at half health. So at best, you can deep strike him, go for a 9-inch charge, which kind of sucks. And when you do that, you also lose all other bonuses from your army roll, which also really sucks. So his ability is pretty bad. Now his Primarch auras aren't awful. They can be generally fairly useful. You can get one of them to like, what is it? I think it lets you ignore most modifiers, but not damage. I mean, it's kind of weird. Here, let me just read his abilities because it slipped my mind. So he's got, you can reroll up to 6 of the D6 on the Blessing of Corn roll. That's actually not bad. On the Overwhelming Wrath, it's a 6-inch aura of you have to pass a leadership test or you can't fall back. Not bad. And then Driven by Ultimate Rage, which is the other one, which means Ward Eater's units within 6 inches get to ignore modifiers to move, advance, charge, and you can ignore modifiers to weapon skill and hit rolls. Personally, I think that's very meh. So his abilities are very meh. He just doesn't have much jank at all. His durability is also very meh. 16 wounds, T11, 2 up, 4 up. It's relatively low as far as Primarchs are concerned for 385. Now, if I were to change Angron, here's what I would do. I would raise his strength on his sweep attack to 8. Just right off the bat. I'd probably give him a strength 18 on the strike as well, but, that doesn't really matter all that much. I don't think it comes into play that often, but yeah, screw it. Give him 18 on the strength, on the strike attacks. Now, I would change his ability. I would say his ability is once per game, he comes back to life at full health. That's his ability. Done. Alternatively, you could just give him new auras. So his auras could go back to reroll, hit roll aura, ignore modifiers, just pure ignore modifiers. Or you could even give him like a Primarch ability that when you select it, you could just get to choose an extra blessing turn. So it's like you get to roll, choose 2 of them, and then you can choose any other blessing. That would also really be a good idea. So I think if you can either change his auras, you need to bump that strength up to 8 on his sweep minimum. And I would definitely change his resurrection. Just give it, hey, once per game you come back to life at full health. You don't have to use your blessings to do it. Or I would do it where it's like, if you do come back resurrect, then you still get to use other blessings rolls, and maybe you can rapid ingress him. So Angron needs some help. He's not in the best place. Then we have the Lion and Roboute, and I made a video a few days ago where a lot of people were telling me I needed to defend my position, where I think the Lion and Roboute is, if he's not the best, he's definitely one of the best Primarchs out there. And here we go. So he's got very decent damage. He at 8 attacks, strength 12, AP 4, damage 4. Now it's not quite as much as your Demon Primarchs, but sorry guys, I just knocked my mic. So it's not quite as high as some of the Demon Primarchs, but it's still very darn decent. And then his sweep attack is amazing with 16 attacks at strength 6, AP 3, damage 2, sustained hits. Very darn decent profiles here where he can actually deal really good damage. Now, when it comes to mobility, it is absolutely extreme mobility. Very, very extreme mobility. First off, your Loyalist Primarchs, which would be just Roboute and the Lion at this point, they get to move through walls as if they were infantry. They're not infantry, but as if they were infantry. So that's a huge increase on mobility. Second off, he has one of his Primarch abilities will allow him to teleport, but it's not at the end of your opponent's your opponent's fight phase, like most of the teleports in the game are. So his uppy downy happens in your command phase, which you can choose that after you see your secondaries. Oh, you need someone to teleport over there to get your attempting target? No problem. Oh, you need someone to teleport over there to get behind enemy lines? Oh, no problem. It's very, very strong. So he has extreme mobility. Then when it comes to jank, he's got some of the most incredible jank of any of the Primarchs in the game right now. That turn 1 rapid ingress potential, if you don't know how this works, so one of his Primarch abilities is at the start of the command phase, you can select to put him back in reserves. You do not need to bring him back down on the table when you do that in the same turn. Which means if you go first in battle round 1, you can pick him up in your turn and you can rapid ingress him on your opponent's turn 1. The reason for this is because the restrictions on arriving via deep strike turn 1 only applies if you started the game in reserves. So it absolutely works. People are going to try to fact check me down below and they're going to tell me it doesn't work. It does work, and it's very, very potent. So if the Dark Angels player happens to go first, he can uppy downy and rapid ingress in turn 1. Very, very powerful, okay? Very, very powerful. Which means Dark Angels, interestingly enough, when they bring the Lionel Johnson, kind of like going first. Now, other jank you can do with this is you can use this to rapid ingress and then do a heroic intervention. Because when you rapid ingress, you can be 9 inches away. If your opponent charged the unit they were trying to charge, then you rapid ingress. Since you fight first, now you fight first and you'll obliterate your opponents before they get to strike, which basically can invalidate charges for an enemy army. You can also rapid ingress him using Lone Up because Loyalist Primarchs get Lone Up when they were within 3 inches of infantry Adeptus Astartes. So there's ways where you can just deep strike onto a objective in the middle of no man's land, rapid ingress after your opponent has done their movement phase, as long as you're 12.1 inches away and you're also within 3 inches of a Adeptus Astartes infantry squad unit, like, I don't know, a lieutenant with combi weapon who also has Lone Up, then you can just get free primary because you rapid ingress there. Your opponent can't shoot you. They're outside of 12 inches. Done. You get free primary, and there's nothing they can do to stop you. So the jank is brutal. He also has some other Primarch abilities, which are both very useful. You've got a 6-inch aura of 4-up Fatal Pain against mortal wounds, and you've got a 6-inch aura of reroll hit rolls and wound rolls of 1, making a lot of your army more or less oath agnostic, at least in the melee phase. High jank. High jank. Now, his durability is decent. He does have 10 wounds, which is 6 less than your Demon Primarchs. He's T9, which is less than your Demon Primarchs, but he's also -1 to be wounded if your strength is higher than the toughness, which basically means that his toughness is always going to be more or less the same, or even better than some of the Demon Primarchs. Because, like, Demon Primarchs, if they get hit by a strength 14 laser destroyer, they're being wounded on 3, but the Lion's still being wounded on a 4. So sometimes his toughness is even better since he has got that ability. Then he does have a 2-up arm save, just like all of the Primarchs, and he has, I think, the only 3-up invulnerable save in the entire game, which is very, very good. It does mean that he can tank more than your opponents want him to tank. So his durability is decent, if not relatively high. And when you wrap this into the 6-inch aura where he can activate for the 4-up Fatal Pain against mortals, it can make him a powerhouse that is very hard to remove, especially since he has fights first. So he is 315 points. Which I think is very darn reasonable. It's possible that's slightly high, but I'm very happy to spend 315 on him right now. Now, I know a lot of people that think that he needs to be closer to 300, which I wouldn't necessarily argue with that, but I think the reason that you would do that is because you're trying to make Space Marines as a faction slightly stronger. I don't think for his model it really needs to go down. I think 315 is pretty fair. Although if it goes down to 300, I won't really be surprised. I would, however, give him devastating wounds against character models, just to reflect his duelist nature. I do think the lack of devastating wounds can really, it can cause some problems for him. But overall, the Lion's freaking amazing. He's got extreme mobility, extreme jank, decent durability, and definitely decent damage. So that is the Lion. And we have one more Primarch, and then we'll actually get into the ranking here. The Primarch is Robbie Guilliman. I'm going to get some comments for that one. So his damage is very darn decent with 7 attacks at strength 14, AP 4, damage 4, lethal. Basically the same as what the Lion has. It's 1 attack less, but it's slightly higher strength. And then he's going to have 14 attacks at strength 8, AP 3, damage 2 with devastating wounds. That for his sweep attack, which is 2 attacks less than the Lion's, 2 strength higher. It doesn't have sustained hits, but does have def. So his melee, I would say, is basically on par. It's the same as what the Lion's is. So he does have actually pretty darn good melee. His mobility is very low. The only Primarch who's got less mobility than him is probably Mortarion. He has no deep strike keyword, so you can never rapid ingress him anywhere. He only moves 8, and that's it. No other way to move anywhere. He does get to walk through ruins just like the Lion does. So he's probably tied for lowest mobility with Mortarion. Now his jank is pretty high. He's got pretty good utility. He gets to choose 2 of his abilities. And his abilities at the start of the command phase is he can have a 12-inch aura of use a discounted stratagem on any Adeptus Astartes unit. And he's got a second Oath of Moment target. So once you kill your first Oath of Moment target, the next one activates. So these are the 2 that you're pretty much always going to see. Occasionally, you'll see his last aura, which is, while not used very often, is still actually quite good because it's +1 to the OC of units within 6 inches, and they get to reroll Battle Shock and Leadership Test, which is actually pretty dang useful in very specific scenarios, such as, I don't know, a Shadows in the Warp. Then his durability is pretty moderate. He's T9, he's 10 wounds, he's got a 2-up armor save and a 4-up invulnerable save, and he gets to stand up on a 3+ once per game. At 320 points, I think he's generally fine. He could go up by 10 to 20 points, and I don't think anyone would complain about that. And if they did, they're probably wrong. Rules-wise, he seems super, super solid. Previously, he was going for like 360 or something, and that was just way too high. I think 320 is probably very reasonable for him. And lastly, let's get into the actual final rankings. Here we go. In first place comes the Magnus. Guys, Magnus is the highest in damage. He's tied for the highest in mobility. He is second highest in durability, and he is probably tied for the highest in jank. I really wanted the Lion to be number 1, but he's not. Magnus is just clearly the best, even though he's also the most expensive. He also probably needs to go up in points. He is the number 1 Primarch. The Lion, in my opinion, is going to be the number 2 Primarch on the battlefield. Just his extreme mobility, basically just shutting down any melee army by himself, because you kind of can't charge him. And his ability to get blown up all over the place, it's just so ridiculous that when you master it, it causes so many problems for your opponent. And if more people are playing the Lion, I think more people will start to realize just how amazing the Lion is. I'm going to try to change that culture myself. Roboute Guilliman is number 3. Very, very solid choice, especially with his double oaths. Both of the units getting +1 to wound against you, taking advantage of the Codex compliant Marine chapters getting +1 to win. Mortarion is number 4. Very good model, very good unit. I think we're going to start seeing him a lot more now that the Death Guard initial nerfs have been kicked in, and we'll probably see more nerfs coming up with the rest of the data slate. I think we'll see Mortarion a lot. Angron is number 5. I don't believe Angron is nearly as bad as what the internet said he was, but I definitely agree Angron needs some help. His strength is a little bit too low. His abilities are a little bit meh. I really want to see them revisit Angron just a little bit, and I hope they don't just drop his points cost. And then with Mr. Fulgrim coming in at 6th, I wasn't sure if Fulgrim was actually worse than Angron. I put them like right at the same level, and I don't think either one of them is actually a bad model. I just don't think they provide very much that their armies really, really desperately wants. So I think that's why we're going to rank them in the lowest. I do believe Fulgrim is more usable than the majority of people say he is, but I also recognize that base is a big problem. So hopefully some of the recommendations I gave here would actually improve these models. And I want to know in the comments down below if you guys agree, if you disagree, and why you disagree. So let me know. And until next time, everybody, crump on. Bye-bye.